Teaching awards are amazing, right? And they do a lot of things for the institution, for other individuals who might be aspiring to that level of teaching. But to me, it's more that the award says to a group of people, we honor, we appreciate, we respect good teaching. And if we think about what our students are expecting when they come to the University of Lethbridge, that's what they're expecting. I mean, we want to give them many, many other kinds of experiences. For instance, you know, an opportunity to work with professors on their research, to co-author papers, to be involved in volunteer situations. We want them to have all of those experiences. But mums and dads and their students want to know that they're being taught by people who, you know, care about them, who want them to succeed, who know how to support them in their desire to get an education. So I think that anything that we do in this institution really must revolve around having good teachers in front of our students.
Teaching is everything that you do where you're communicating with people and sharing ideas. In a sense, the interaction between us is a teaching experience of a sort. You know, you're asking me questions, I'm providing information. You know, from that you get some idea not only about the topic, but my feeling about the topic. And I think very much in teaching, students are going to pick up very quickly on whether you care about the things that you're saying.
Getting a teaching award is daunting because it holds you to a high bar, and as I say, I shouldn't believe everything I think, and so it's dangerous to think you're a good teacher. You're only as good as your current classroom and present time with your students, but working together with students is a real passion of mine.
Teaching is an unusual endeavor in that it's you and the students in the classroom. Your peers don't usually ever see you teaching. They might hear on the rumor mill who's the good teacher and who's not so good and so forth, but relatively rarely do one of your peers come into the classroom and see you teaching. So it's a really interesting notion of having a teaching award that mostly has to come from what students say about you.
I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, a lot of people do complain that how do you measure it? You can't measure it. You can't quantify it. And if we go by teaching evaluations, you know, what are they? How much useful information? I have to be a bit cautious because maybe what I'm seeing is the type of teaching that appeals to me, and I'm aware of that. But I've also seen a lot of people and a lot of comments that to me indicate really strong teaching. And there's a couple of things. There's students who will say, well, this was a really hard course. This is one of the hardest courses or the hardest profs, but I learned a lot. That to me is way more than so-and-so's a great guy, right? Really friendly. So there's challenging students, there's engaging with students at a level beyond the social into the intellectual and academic. And there's just reflection on teaching.
I was touched actually, and I remember getting the teaching award. I was like, oh, because students put my name forward and all this sort of stuff. You know, when I got it, I thought, I gotta go stand on the stage, and you know, I wasn't too thrilled about it. But I was very touched by the applause and the acknowledgement and all that sort of stuff. So surprisingly, you know, I was like, this is weird. I'm like moved by the recognition. So the recognition felt good. And so I suppose in some ways it feels like, hey, someone thinks that what you're doing is good, and your students recognize it in some ways, and you're being acknowledged for having achieved some kind of success at what you're doing.
It was just such an honor. And the reason it was such an honor is because, and I know this happens to many, many candidates, is that I had been nominated on 2 other occasions as well. And, you know, the first time you say to the students, how, you know, thank you very much, but you really know in your heart that, you know, it's a real process, and many people's names come forward on more than one occasion. So because I think it was my 3rd nomination, I think it just meant so much, because I realized that it was a group of students, but it was a 3rd group of students who felt that way. And I remember when I got the award at convocation, they stood up and clapped, and I was just speechless, truly. It was, even now, it's so hard to believe that you still get choked up about it, but when it's something you care about so much, it's just, yeah, it's just an amazing experience.
Well, the teaching award I won in 1989, and at that point I'd been teaching for 5 years as a lecturer on 1-year terms, and I found out in my 9th month of pregnancy that I was nominated for the teaching award, which was just amazing because it had been quite an unusual semester. And not just for me, because in those days there weren't that many women mathematicians, right? And I mean, we had 1 at the U of L, and that put us ahead of the national average by per capita, you know. And it was such a thrill to be nominated, and yeah, I just felt on top of the world.
Total surprise, very wonderful honor. The nice thing about the teaching awards is that they're largely student generated. They, you know, students have to submit letters and you know, suggest why this particular person might be worthy of an award. And so it's a real honor to feel that students would make that effort. That takes an effort for the students to do that, and I was just thrilled and delighted by that. Of course, the main thing is it then makes you feel, well, now I have to do even better. And I would say that was one of the biggest impacts, was you can't rest on your laurels. You know, if I've got a teaching award, I have to maintain this standard, as I would want to anyway, but you know, through the rest of my career, and do even better. And so I think in some ways that was the first and most immediate response.
I'm willing to try new things in the classroom and with students, and you know, put myself out there a little bit. But an award makes you think that you can take even bigger risks, I think, because even if you fail, you sort of say, yeah, but remember that one time? Somebody thought it was great. So I do think it frees you up to take risks that aren't as calculated. So I would say before the award, if I tried new things in my teaching, I would still always be concerned and you know, question, now what could happen here? But I think it was a little bit of, you know, well, throw off that yoke a bit and try something. I think that's one of the things that helped. The other thing it did, though, was it put me in touch with other amazing teachers across campus. And that, I think, has been, I refer to it as a second lease on life for me as a teacher. Because I think you can only learn so much in your own discipline, but whenever you open up, you know, conversation and dialogue with people from other disciplines, it's just a whole new world. It's a different way of thinking about teaching.
But I did notice that first year or so, people used to say to me, well, you're so soft, right? You're going to get eaten alive. You're not tough enough. And partly this was a gender thing, and if, you know, I was young in those days, and if you were young and female and small and smiled a lot, people thought you wouldn't have that authority in the classroom. And so that was an issue for me early on. And then there's always this issue of popularity, right? Are the best teachers the ones who are popular? And so for me, I think that early teaching award in a sense, gave me some validity and credibility as a teacher, and made me realize, okay, I like this, I'm good at this, I can do this, and other people respect what I'm doing. And it gave me some freedom, I think, to be even more myself in the classroom, perhaps. In the longer term, winning the teaching award early, I would say, set me up later to do things that I wanted. I've always felt really supported in my teaching at the U of L by various deans over the years.
So I approach, teaching in exactly the same way. I want to do the very best I can to inspire learning in my students. And I don't think that changes with a designation or not. But I think it does bring a degree of confidence that, lets you at least try new things. And when things don't go as well, I think I'm maybe not quite as hard on myself as I used to be. And I don't know that that's actually because of having been Board of Governors teaching chair, but I do feel a lot more confidence in terms of how I approach what I'm doing. And I still love teaching, so I never saw it as something that was administrative and removed me from the classroom.
I do believe you can really only change your own practice, but it made me more aware of how much a learner I am, and that I think I started out with a fairly rigid notion of teaching, a kind of tell and talk approach, which is completely opposite to what I am now. So in 2010, at the same time, I also had a car accident and broke my sternum. So I had an award on the one hand, and I had a broken sternum on the other. And a little micro skirmish with the mortal wall is always good for one to sort of say, okay, what really matters? And so both the award and the accident, but more the award, made me wonder what matters in teaching, what could be let go, and how would I use whatever energy I have for authentic engagement, for critical thinking, for inviting people to solve some of the world's problems around its children and learning. What do we need to learn? So it sparked a whole line of thinking for me.
One of the problems, I think, is that the rewards for research are tangible and appreciated, and I think that the rewards for good teaching are not obvious, and they're much delayed.
I now realize it is important, and it's very important for people, particularly in the early stages of their careers. An affirmation, an honoring of the quality of their work. I would say that from an educative point of view, I'd say that about everything. It's better if people are honored, affirmed, awarded, rewarded earlier in their careers rather than later. Like, be the institution that can catch people and recognize potential and honor it and make it work for the institution. It only makes us better.
So specific actions the president takes are, they're largely encouraging people. I mean, we encouraged a couple of applications for significant awards while we were here, a couple of 3Ms that didn't work. But nonetheless, we've put together applications, and I think the persons that were involved in that were also appreciative, and it motivated them to continue in their career.
The 3M Fellowship, there is no reason in the world why we should not have candidates being nominated for that award every single year from the University of Lethbridge. I mean, I know now the quality of teaching across this campus, and it just goes without saying that there are amazing teachers here who are so committed and dedicated to their students that we do ourselves a bit of a disservice by not nominating individuals on a regular basis from this university learning from those nominations and continuing to do that.
How you champion teaching within the institution, how you recognize individuals. I think teaching awards are especially important, not just for the person receiving the award, but for those that work with him or her, and because the awards really recognize a group effort. With usually a single individual or others being recognized. So, I mean, the Board of Governors teaching chairs, for example, were something that we brought in.
At GFC, there was this once-a-year discussion about how, well, we value teaching equally. And I remember saying after to Seamus and Andy, well, you know, we say we value them equally, but we've got this research chair. Why don't we have something similar for teaching, right? And there were people like Pat Chutrick, who was here then, who, you know, would have been an obvious person for that. And I think several people were thinking along the same lines. And I was on the CATL committee, the predecessor of the Teaching Center, for a year or two of the planning, and it sort of grew out of that. So I applied, and I think there was some sort of delay in getting things going that first year, and I didn't hear anything for a long time, and I thought, oh, well, okay. And then Andy phoned me at my cabin one day and said, oh, about that teaching chair. Yeah, so I was thrilled. That was really wonderful. And it was fabulous for me, but I think it was also really wonderful for the university to make that statement about teaching, right? That to make it visible in those ways that it hadn't been before.
The university then instituted the Board of Governors teaching chair. And I remember hearing about it, and I even remember when I first heard about it, I called Shelley Wismat and had lunch with her and just said, could you tell me more about it? And I came away thinking that it was something I was interested in, but I felt like I didn't fully understand, you know, what its intent was. So a couple of years later, Rick Mrazek became Board of Governors teaching chair from our faculty, and I sat down and talked to him about it. And together, we sort of thought, oh, this might be something you'd really like, Robin, and he was prepared to nominate me. So it's like I never stopped thinking about teaching from the time I received the award to the time that I became Board of Governors. But it was just, you know, you just put your time and effort into whatever's in front of you. And so I did that. And when that became, when I became aware of the Board of Governors teaching chair, then I thought, no, this is something that I'd really love to be involved in. And then to get it, and the actual finding out about it was very exciting. But the first time I chaired, you know, a meeting in the teaching center was when I really felt like this was something important and special and had some real teeth to it, that, you know, we could make a difference on campus in terms of highlighting teaching. That's when I thought, oh, this is very cool.
And I was just recently preparing a teaching dossier for an award, and I had to ask former students for feedback. And I didn't know that they were going to give them to me rather than to the committee, and they were very gratifying. But still, but we don't go into this job because we want instant gratification. If you went into this job because you wanted instant gratification, you'd be instantly out.
And times have changed. These days, every PhD student has a statement of teaching philosophy. The first time I wrote one was for the board chair application. And it was actually a really hard but useful exercise. And since then, I guess maybe for promotion, and then the board chair, and then some other things, every 4 or 5 years since then, I've had to go back and write something like that. And that's been immensely illuminating, because I look back at what I wrote 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and I think, wow, I've really changed. On the other hand, I look back and I see the same issues and concerns and themes that were there I've just explored them a lot differently and a lot more deeply.
And that's something that the university can and should really continue to support, right? Is teachers helping one another, whether it's developing a peer review process, right, where we can work together. It's more awards. I don't think the Distinguished Teaching Award is the only award that should be given for teaching. I think we should have ways to recognize somebody trying something risky, right? Or something brand new, or trying something, writing an article, and having some recognition for articles that are written about the scholarship of teaching, not just in the particular discipline. So I just think that we've only made a start on this campus in terms of really recognizing and celebrating teaching, and I do think we have to continue to do that kind of work.